So it's that time to look back on the previous year, but things are a bit different. See, throughout my life, I have grown more and more attached to video games, but the more you care about something, the more things you start to see. And this year, as I'm sitting here trying to think of what are my favorite games of 2024, I also can't help but think about all the layoffs, studio closures, ballooning budgets and development time, and just all these things that have just made it a really turbulent year for video games. So, instead of simply saying what my favorite games of 2024 are, I want to ask what are the favorite game experiences that I've had this year, and ones that kind of give me hope for video games going forward. And these are the 10 games that did that for me in 2024. Well, sort of. Because there's a couple games here that are not from 2024. I just simply played them for the first time this year. So if you have a problem with that, just stick around. There's honorable mentions that you could just swap them out with. But hello, Samurai Kibuji, gamer in his 30s that loves to work out, watch anime, read self-development books, and encourage you to chase whatever passions that you love. So let's get right into it with the first game on this list. Or should I say games? There's kind of two different perspectives on this one. The Finals and Deathloop are two games that I played this year, so it just depends. If you want a full playthrough game, then that's Deathloop. I played that from start to finish this year. A very hard game to start, but when you finally, there's a moment that it's gonna click for you, and then you just can do not necessarily whatever you want in this game, but you just can approach it however you want. It'll give you these leads to assassinate this group of people within a single 24-hour time frame. And there's just so many ways to go about that. There's not just a single way to do it, like one of my other all-time favorite games, Outer Wilds. There's multiple ways, and you get to discover all that and keep track of all that. The world just oozes artistic design, so it's like, if you want a first playthrough, that's that. But the Finals is a multiplayer game that stuck with me throughout this whole year. Yes, it was the last month of the year that, made it awesome, but this was the year that it got full-blown live service shenanigans. Here's your new mode, here's a bunch of new maps, here's a bunch of it kicked ass. The game itself is so unique and fresh for doing stuff that I've never seen before, aka the destruction fad that just seems to have faded away. This is basically Bad Company had a baby with Fall Guys, and the absolute destruction and chaos that happens, there just isn't a multiplayer shooter like it. But that is it, no more shared. The rest of these are a single game, and the 9th entry here, I really value it because something I really appreciate is spending time with people. And of all the games on this list, this is probably my favorite one to do that. Super Mario Party Jamboree is one of those games that you could just play with anybody. I have a lot of family, basically most of my family, that aren't really gamers whatsoever, but this is the only game that I can play with them. And that is because Mario Party Jamboree, it's not just the board games that you will destroy friendships with people, but it's also how much side content is in this game. They have motion control mini games that I literally on Christmas Day was kind of working together with my dad, and I would do it on the plane too as just a quick activity. Because when you do the Mario Party stuff, it can last over an hour, if not multiple. So it's nice to have all these little activities that they put in, including for multiplayer with kind of marathon and a work together against Bowser situation. There's a lot of content in Mario Party that just, I love playing on the couch with people. It's one of the best ways to just bond with a group, and hot take, playing on the couch with people is 20 times better than playing with them online for this game. Mario Party Jamboree, best party game of the year for me. But when I am not with my friends, I think about way back how there used to be so many great just blockbuster movie shooter campaigns that I would go through. And I haven't really had anything like that since Titanfall 2. But this year, there is a game that finally managed to give me that after not playing any of them from any entry from this franchise in over 13 years. Call of Duty gamers get to experience that campaign every year. That is the blockbuster adventure, but because I am so frugal, I have not bothered. However, because Microsoft spent $70 billion, I got to experience it with Game Pass, and I got to experience what a lot of people are deeming as the best Call of Duty potentially ever. I wanted it just for its campaign, which It did exactly what I wanted, by the way. It is a campaign that varies like crazy with the amounts of missions and the types. You got an open world one, you got like a Mission Impossible one, you got a spy one, a heist, and even a scary one without giving context. Like, there is so much mission variety in the campaign with memorable characters and such. But it's the full package. In a year that, you know, people are fighting for your time and the ballooning budgets and stuff, this is a game that just feels the whole package. You got a well-polished campaign, you got co-op with COD Zombies, you got PvP multiplayer, and all of it just feels like everything is there. It doesn't feel like much or anything was left on the cutting room floor or players were getting shorted, with no bugs, no limits, just super smooth first-person shooter gameplay that makes it so addictive. But these next two entries, I bet no one has on their lists. Especially this next one, because we go from like a mega AAA game down to an indie roguelike that you may have never even heard of before. Go Mecha Ball is just fun, fun, fun. It takes a little bit getting used to just playing as what is essentially a pinball action game, but you can shoot also. Like, it's really neat. You're playing kind of like as a Sonic form that can stop every now and then to shoot like crazy. And that sounds, you know, okay, neat, but surprisingly, it has a bit of an addictive nature to it, because the base game is literally just like 40 minutes. It is super short. But what makes it long is you playing it over and over and over to hopefully reach the hardest difficulty, which is gonna take a lot. You have like four different characters with different specialties. Looking at you, Final Fantasy VII, that you can kind of flush out, because as you play through the game, you get these perks through each level that you might want to put on certain characters to help you progress farther, but you're gonna have to figure that out. The controls are snappy, the action's intense, it's got really kick-ass music, and it just kind of gives this feeling of having an arcade game on your home console/TV. But what I also appreciate is AAA publishers trying out AA sized projects. If I could redo my 2023 list, I would have put Pikmin 4 as my game of the year. And there's one game this year that really tickled that itch. While Black Ops 6 reunited me with my blockbuster campaign shooters and Go Mecha Ball with like an arcade style feel, Kunitsugami reunited me with this PS2 era feeling of games. And I can't quite explain why. The basic premise is that you're guiding a woman up this mountain that has been corrupted by a bunch of dark spirits, and you're going to be using a lot of these different spirits, villagers, whatever, to do that in what is basically a tower defense game. But you also get to play alongside them as this samurai or whatever, and so the game doesn't have anything super specialized, but it's just kind of the whole collectiveness of it. The day and night cycle makes you scramble to get as much done as you can, as fast as you can, which again, that Pikmin love. And I also love the tower defense part of it, where you're going to be wanting certain villagers maybe for certain situations, because maybe there's like a high ground that you could put like archers or a gunman or something to cover while the rest are on the ground with the priestess. And at the same time, you, the player, are running around to assist however you can. This just, and it's another game that I feel like isn't that buggy or anything like that. The art direction and music feel like you are literally in a folk tale. There is a ton of enemy variety. Like, this was just a fun game to play with a lot of different style levels too. Sometimes it might feel repetitive, but I was glad. Like, this was an awesome game to play this year, especially it being a brand new IP. And as we approach the top 5, it would mean a lot if you would like, comment, or subscribe, because that would help suggest this to other people that just want to reflect on their year of video games. But there's a game this year that a lot of people debated. Is this a contender for Game of the Year? Is it eligible or not? But for me, it was an experience that lasted longer than I think any other entry on this list except for one. And it gave me one of the best adventures of the year that I had a hard time putting the controller down. Yes, to play Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, you have to have the base game, but it's a new world, new weapons, new bosses, new enemies, new music. It's basically a new game that just is part of another, you know? The world, while not as immaculate as the base game, it is still very intriguing, and all these things that FromSoft, Miyazaki, or whoever think of, I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they keep thinking of all the things that you can see and do and experience here, but there are bosses that I would spend hours trying to beat, but still not mind getting my ass kicked. I'm looking at you, Death Knights. And there's still a lot of those what is that moments or no freaking way. Like they do a good job of presenting what is Shadows of the Erdtree and the player experience that is going to throw a few curveballs at you, including one of the hardest bosses I've ever fought in my entire life. In a year that I have grown tired of open worlds, this was a nice last hurrah before I take a potential break from them. Half of the games on this list I'm so fond of because it triggered this buried feeling of nostalgia in me. And the fourth game that gave me that vibe, I haven't had since perhaps my favorite era of video games being the Xbox 360. Other than one more entry on this list, Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 felt the most game of anything on this list. This game felt like a game. And I say this as somebody that has no Warhammer experience whatsoever. All you need to know is that you are just playing as these walking tanks that are Space Marines, whatever, Ultramarines, I don't even know. And you are just killing all these things that could threaten your survival and your people's survival. That's just, the entire universe is war. I heard it perfectly on a podcast that was like, I have no idea what's going on, but this is the coolest, nerdiest shit I've ever seen. It sort of got that campaign that I was saying back with the Black Ops 6 entry where I just wanted a nice, campaign to experience, and even a lot of massive callouts for longtime fans. But the gameplay is so heavy, refined, bloody, I can't explain it. Like, you just feel the weight of every shot, of every swing, of every hit. And the enemy variety is awesome, too. There are so many different types of enemies, but not only do you feel like that in the campaign, you feel like that in the multiplayer, which is probably the reason why it's this high on the list, because yes, there is a PvP that, you got a couple maps, a couple modes, and it's fun if you want it, but the real thing is the PvE, where you go on these operations that are basically more campaign missions, and you get to upgrade these classes of the Marines you play as. Maybe you're one that likes to jump up with a jetpack, or maybe you're one that just focuses on sword and shield. Maybe you're one that just likes to snipe. Whatever one, just think of it imagine this game is the baby of Gears of War and Left 4 Dead. That's all I need to say. We're gonna move on. But now we get to the part where some of you might get mad. This was the first time I played this game. And even though it's not a 2024 game, it did have an expansion this year. And apparently, it was my most played game of the year, which totally caught me off guard. But when I think about certain days where I would wake up and go to bed playing it, I guess that makes sense. Of all the games I didn't play in 2023, Diablo 4 was my most regretted that I missed, and I am really happy to say it is good enough to be at number 3 on this list. And I'm talking about both the campaign, the base game, and Vessel of Hatred. I experienced both of those this year, and this was my first ever Diablo experience, kind of like another entry coming up. But Diablo is all about, just pick a class and set it up, grind in the world, and just kill demons like crazy and try to make yourself as strong as you could possibly be. And there is a campaign, there is the base campaign. That's the thing. It actually has a narrative that kept me wanting to go through it, just hunting down this Lilith character that, is a problem, but is she really, and good base game. And the DLC also was fine enough. It was exactly what I wanted DLC to be. For a base game that I thought the grind was a blast, the world, character designs, enemy designs, that I loved experiencing. And then if I want more of that, here's a DLC to do that with a whole new region, new characters, new story, new class, new enemies. I think the way I put it to simply say, Mass Effect and Starfield taught me that I'm not that much of an RPG guy, but Elden Ring and Diablo taught me that maybe I am an action RPG guy. But if you have an issue with Diablo 4, here's some honorable mentions before revealing the 2 games that I am just the most happy to have experienced this year. In terms of new, you could swap out, Diablo and Finals Deathloop with these. Still Wakes the Deep and Animal Well. Just put them at number 10. These are 2 awesome games that I thought just really impressed me. And in terms of old, Kenna Bridge of Spirits and Venba are 2 other games as well. I'm very glad to have finally experienced Kenna Bridge of Spirits. That was one I was really waiting for. And Tears of the Kingdom, that came up last year. I played tons of it, but I didn't beat it until this year. And if I beat that, it probably would have been in my top 5 of 2023. And there's also games I wished I played this year, which I will just leave for a Patreon podcast that I'll link in the description. Every time when there's my most hoped or wanted to play game that I didn't play, it winds up being my game of the year or in my top 3. So I'll just say maybe Helldivers 2 will do that next year because I really wanted to play that, dang it. But going back to it, there is one game this year that managed to make a lot of official Game of the Year nominations. Heck, it even won a few of them. But for me, while it didn't make my number 1 slot, it also didn't make my number 2 because I was too busy playing the other game that the studio released this year. That's right, folks. I played my first ever Persona game. Now stop asking me. I knew Persona Ooze style, but dude, come on. Persona 3 Reload has so much amazing presentation to it as you play as these high schoolers just trying to go out at night and fight these monsters and stuff, but all you need to know is that I have learned in recent years that I love turn-based action games as well. And this is great because each character specializes in something. Again, looking at you, Final Fantasy VII. And you can customize them to hopefully flush out what makes that character great. Speaking of the characters being great, everyone in the main cast is pretty gosh darn likable to me. Even people on the side. The most addictive element of this game is getting attached to these people and working ways of bonding with them, because apparently that actually affects the gameplay and the combat that you will do with your team. And there's actually even some deep storytelling with themes about death and living. This game is insanely repetitive. On paper, it is. You are just constantly every night and every day doing the same things, but somehow the character designs, the audio, the VFX, the camera work, the music. Oh my God, the music. Even the UI, look at this. Why does a UI have to look this good? It all just kind of helps make the game constantly interesting enough to keep doing this loop after loop. While I didn't play Metaphor ReFantazio, and I'm sure that is an amazing game too, I am now look, after 100 hours of Persona 3 Reload, one Atlas game is enough for me every year, so I can just look forward to the next one. But in this year, where various size projects are on my list, I knew one would be really hard to take over. To see what a modest team size with fantastic ideas and true passion behind their project can really do. No microtransactions, no fighting over your time, no dailies. Just have fun. How does Astrobot, a game that I have put less time in than basically every other entry on this list, get to be my top game of 2024? And I see all the people out there, it's just a carbon copy of Mario. Okay, is there any game on this list that is not heavily inspired by a game before it? Yes, Astrobot has a basic premise of just, your ship, your crew, it's all scattered across this galaxy and you gotta go around saving them. But every level offers you something new or something you haven't seen before. There are so many ideas that were put into this game that you could feel the studio just thought of and they rolled with, but most importantly, they put it in. They executed it, and they executed it fantastically. It feels like every level is just like a 5 to 10 minute thing that you can just try out something that the studio was wanting to try. It feels like nothing was left on the cutting room floor, and that's just something that I very rarely feel when I play through a game. Because it's clear that the studio, first and foremost, they didn't want to worry about how big the game was, how much graphics the games has. They just wanted to focus on the player that chooses to play the game to have as much fun as possible with the world, the level design, the music, the mechanics. Like, there's so many moments that I would just stop this game to relish in how cool or fun something really was. It took over probably like 20% of my playtime. And in that vein, the technology of the game too. It's like really cool how just all these pieces fall apart beneath you that just react specifically to what you are doing instead of a pre-programmed thing. But most importantly, a super well-polished platformer that's coming from a AAA publisher. There's just no games like this anymore, I feel like, other than from Nintendo. And I need more AAA publishers to do this. Astrobot is not only my game of the year for how fun it is and how well crafted it is, but also for really inspiring me that there are teams out there that can still make the game in 3 years, that can still not spend hundreds of millions of dollars and just make a fun ass game that needs to be what it needs to be. Astrobot is one of my games of the generation. And now's the part where you tell me and everyone else watching, what were your favorite games of 2024? How off is my list from yours? Like, just comment whatever, or if you want more content, then check out the side here. And just stay tuned for 2025, because it's looking to be one of the most insane years for video games, and hopefully things improve. And I appreciate getting to be with you, whatever steps that might be. And don't forget to be geek, be proud, be awesome, and thank you for another year.